All right, another edition of Riding Home, this time with Ryan Curley.
Again.
Well, Matt DeBerry is stuck in flight somewhere in Canada. No, Matt's fine. He had to do some stuff. So, the Missouri Tigers are going to try to knock off Georgia. I do not buy this in any way. Ever. Comments? Go ahead, Ryan.
There's nothing over the first month of college football that showed me Missouri is even going to really be competitive in this football game. I mean, they're in a really bad spot right now. They've had better days in the past. They've had much better days in the past. This is not the Missouri
That's a
of
great
10
way to
years
put
ago.
it. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It's not the Missouri of 10 years ago that was competing for SEC championships. So it's not the same program it was. They've had a lot of coaching turnover over the last few years, and that game with Auburn was ugly. And there's no other way to put it. And
Did
you
you
go
watch
to
all of it?
double overtime. I just watched bits and pieces. I didn't watch it in one sitting, but it wasn't good. And both of those programs are in an awful spot right now, considering their history. So it's just not a good look for the Missouri Tigers. They do have home field advantage. I'm curious. I've never been there. I am looking forward to that aspect of our trip, just seeing a new stadium and seeing a new place. But I don't know how dogs travel to Mizzou. I'm not sure. You could probably tell me a lot more about that.
Well, it depended on the year. In 2012, a lot of Georgia people were out there for that game, and that was an important moment in the SEC. I mean, Mike Slive was there, the commissioner of the SEC, who brought in Missouri and Texas A&M. But in 14 there were a fair amount of fans. 16 I could not go for a medical situation, but I mean, there are always plenty of Georgia fans at these games because Georgia fans kind of live everywhere. But I am trying to remember in 20, of course, when I went there, 18 was a noon game, and that was the 12 crowd was pretty good, but the 18 crowd I felt like was a little better. Now in 12, that was the first SEC game in Missouri history, and they were breathing down Georgia's neck. I think Georgia was winning, maybe going into the fourth quarter. They won the game by 24. So it was tight. Like it was like Georgia was either up 3 or down 4 or something like that. I think they might have been up 24-20, and then Jarvis Jones happened.
Oh yeah, I remember
You
that.
don't ever want Jarvis Jones to happen to you, okay? You want Jarvis Jones to happen to other people. And anyway,
he had a hell of a 2012. He did.
I mean, it's so good to see him all the time, and he is genuinely one of the guys that Thomas Brown, Jarvis Jones. These are guys who are adults. These are
Yeah.
guys who, my favorite Jarvis Jones story came after a loss, which was the 2011 South Carolina game. And Georgia had lost to Boise. Georgia had lost to South Carolina in a game that should not have lost to South Carolina. I mean, Georgia was a better team that day, and South Carolina just won. They had 3 turnovers for a touchdown, 3 non-offensive touchdowns, Ryan, and they won by 4. So there you go. But Jarvis was standing in the old locker room, which are now, I think, like hoity-toity seating. And
I know what you're talking about.
they would never let this duo in there. I'll tell you that right now. Tonight, but everybody in there has DAWGSTRUCTION. Let me tell you that right now, Ryan.
I'm sure they do.
They do, and if they don't, they can pick it up in the link down below. Make sure you're picking up 80 pages. If you want me to personalize it for you, I have no problem. That's awesome for your dad or your mom. I need to know it immediately. When you order it now, email me, dean@dawgpost.com.
There's also some copies at the place.
Oh yes, at Red Zone.
Right?
There are copies at Red Zone, and while we're doing this, we will be at Paloma Park this coming Friday at 4:00 to 7. Ryan will not be drinking you under the table, but he will be there for happy hour, and it will give us the ability to talk about the Dogs while you are watching the Braves, who really need to win when they're supposed to win. Do you have a comment about that?
Yeah, no, I mean that the Mets series is going to be a big deal. I
really.
didn't get to watch last night, so
Well,
I didn't see it. I was
got
driving.
got to close these things out. But Jarvis is sitting there in the old locker room, and he was on the G, which was kind of a weird thing. But anyway, um, and he just said, "Hey, listen, I know we're a good team, and we're about to go do it." And they won 10 games in a row, and that team, their win at Tennessee was really important. The win at Ole Miss was important too, but their win at Tennessee was really important. The Mark Richt's, I think, coaching against Florida, that was a really big moment for Mark. They would have gotten fired had they lost to Florida that year. And then just winning the East was an impressive thing in 2011. But Jarvis, a season later, they got out to a 4-0 or 6-love, whatever it was, before they lost to Carolina. But Jarvis was part of the reason why. I mean, what he did against Missouri was really important. And those Georgia fans were going crazy at Memorial Stadium in Columbia. That was a great Georgia win, no
Yeah,
question.
I remember. I was a kid watching that on TV. I remember that game,
Yeah.
and that was a really special moment. One that I remember for weeks talking about with my little buddies back in the day. So um, he was a big deal. I actually had my freshman year here. I pulled up to my geology class. One of those random courses you got to take when you're early on in college, and Jarvis was in that class with me,
Mhm. No, he's a
getting
great
getting that degree.
he's a
Yeah.
great guy. He really is, and a
So
heck of a player. But where do you? I mean, so you just give Mizzou just no shot. I don't give him any chance.
I'm not giving anyone 0% chance because I don't think that exists in sports.
Okay.
But
Are you giving? Is it
close.
higher than one?
No, it's one.
Yeah.
I would give them. I would say 99%. I mean, Georgia's just way better. They don't even have to play. Like we talked about this the other day. I mean, I don't even think that they need to play people like A.D. Mitchell and Jalen Carter. I would rest these guys on the. I would just rest them if
Yeah,
they're
but
really dealing with these nagging things. And I know that it's important that they get in a rhythm, but I
there's
mean,
two
one
there's two
week.
things. Speaking of Jarvis, in 2012 he went to Kentucky with Georgia, and people are like, well, why is he going if he's not going to play? Well, he can get treatment while he's there. Now the rules may have changed. I don't know, but that's the reason Jarvis went. And I think to me, um, I would travel those guys. Now I don't know about AD. Now if AD's not ready to go, I wouldn't travel him. I wouldn't mess with it. But because that is not a short trip. They're flying straight to Middle Earth. We've got to go to St. Louis before we drive. It's still a pretty good, you,
It's
you
like 2
know,
hours, right?
yeah, 2.5, depends on the traffic in St. Louis, which is, people talk about, oh, there's traffic in Atlanta. Man,
There's traffic everywhere, man.
well, have you ever been to St. Louis on a Friday? I mean, do people go to Charleston? Have you been to Charlotte? Charlotte's traffic is horrible. It's bad. Nashville,
Have you
Southern Nashville is trash in terms of traffic. Go ahead.
have you been on Lumpkin Street at 5 o'clock?
I
You're not
mean,
moving for a
I don't
while.
want to hear about Atlanta's traffic. That is like, if we're talking about Cobb County, hey, that's that side of Atlanta. I don't go that way. I don't deal with that. That's y'all's problem. I wouldn't, that is bad traffic. But at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, it's bad traffic. There are 6 million people that live in Atlanta. You know, I mean, what are we
The
doing
traffic's
here?
always the traffic's always the worst where you live, right?
I never thought it was that bad in Tucker personally, but I have been around enough to know my friends and I. The worst interstate to drive on in the history of the world is I-26 going from Charleston to Asheville. It is horrible. There's always traffic. It doesn't make it, it makes no difference, man. So
Hey, we're not in
anyway,
the car, but look, you get a traffic rant.
yeah, I mean,
Somehow
we're
we
just
somehow we got to that
we're just
point.
here to compete, man. I mean, like I like an open highway myself. I don't.
I had an open highway last night. There was a stretch, and it was at this point it was as dark as it gets,
Oh,
and
that's
there
outside.
was about a 5 to 10 minute stretch where I didn't see another car behind me or in front of me. My lights were the only thing lighting up this highway. It was
Now,
kind of cool.
now, do you get lectured about deer? My dad always has to say something about
Oh
deer.
yeah, dude,
I'm like, look,
100%.
hey, Dad, look, what am I going to do? I'm gonna swerve. No, I'm hitting that bitch. He's going on the windshield. I'm not swerving.
That's what my dad would tell me. He was like, don't swerve, either slow down or just go through it.
I slow down. No, I slow down. And you got
Yeah,
to
well,
know.
I haven't hit one yet. I haven't even had a super close encounter. I've hit my,
Oh no,
you
I
know,
haven't.
my squirrel kill count's pretty high.
Well,
But
what's
they're
wrong
just
with
they
squirrels? Are they just like not smart at all? Like, but why, bro? You're gonna just run out and you're running back, and then you're running back out in front of the tire. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're earning
it's
getting
it's
killed.
crazy because their side to side is nuts, and they're one of the fastest animals out there. So I don't get how they're getting killed so much. I mean,
They're
you can
not
get out of
smart.
that situation.
Their brain is like smaller than this, man.
They're 5 stars that never panned out. That's my take on squirrels
Let me
when
just
it comes
add.
to their athleticism.
They're what, 5 star?
When it comes to their
They
athleticism, they're
might be
five
six
stars.
star, man. Those guys can climb trees.
Yeah,
But
but
like,
but I've still gotten a bunch of them out.
no, a deer hit us. I've hit deer.
Okay, you.
I've twice grazed or hit a deer. There's a road from Augusta to Athens, which no one should ever take anymore because 78 is
Okay.
so nice. But it's Georgia 22. There is literally no one on that thing ever. No troopers, no deputies, nothing. Just you and the deer. And we were some buddies of mine were coming. We were coming from Columbia or Saluda or somewhere, and these are South Carolina guys. And we are going to the Georgia Carolina game in like Georgia 2003 maybe. Man, we're coming up 22, going too fast. But here comes this deer, and it's like you can see them, like they're looking at you with a lot of judgment as you're about to take them out, and the thing just grazed off what I had an SUV at the time, and my buddies were going crazy. They loved it. I mean, like they just thought it was bizarre. And then one time I hit a deer. A deer hit me. My wife was driving and I was in the passenger, and it just wham! And I didn't know what happened. We did not have children at that time, but it would have scared me half to death. But there's a lot of deer in Missouri too, man. Let me tell you something. St. Louis, Kansas City, those are not Missouri. Those are their own places. We're about to go through Missouri, and there's just nothing there. There's nothing there. It's very agricultural, like the bulk of the Midwest. I think Missouri is Midwestern. Why
I
don't you
think that
get?
it's considered. It's like this the south end of it,
I mean,
but
is Kansas City the South? I wouldn't say that.
no,
It's,
no, no, like the southern point of the Midwest.
yes,
But
we are
yeah, I
saying
mean,
right
Kansas
now.
City is considered a Midwestern city.
So is St. Louis, right?
Yeah, both of them. Yeah, so Missouri's in the Midwest, but no, look, we're gonna have to deal with that nothingness in the middle of the night.
Well, yeah, this is like I'm still monitoring this hurricane. I think we're okay. I
Yeah,
think
what's we got to talk about plan if your flight gets canceled
yeah,
or
I'm
something.
worried about
Am I
this,
just
but
going in there solo?
well, we'll talk about that off air. But I
Yeah,
am I am concerned, and it doesn't look like it's going to mess with it's wind. I've learned is the real issue here. It's
not the
well,
rain.
that's yeah, it's not rain or anything like that. It's everything that comes with the rain. So, but we'll get out there. We'll be fine. But I don't know how I've started on this rant, but I don't want to hear about traffic in Atlanta. Everybody just
Yeah.
listen. If you hate Atlanta for your reason, fine, but don't blame the traffic. I mean, those of us who grew up in Atlanta, we're good with it. We're used to it. You know, it's cool. You know, whatever. But don't hate Atlanta because of traffic. That's your problem.
If
Um,
you choose to live there and go through it every day, then you
that's your
shouldn't be
you.
complaining too much.
Oh, yeah, but it's not those people. It's everybody else.
Well, then they're not ATLians or whatever it is.
ATLians are people who have moved to Atlanta, right? So
Is
uh,
that
that is, I can confirm that that is true because one of the two guys from Outkast, I believe Big Boy, was from Savannah.
okay?
Yeah, and so he moved over there. Now Andre 3000, I believe, was always from there. But see, like I know that probably Riverdale Road. I know all that. I was never invited to the dungeon. However, I think I would have fit in just fine.
Okay.
You don't think so? Listen,
Uh,
that album was a
I don't
big
know.
out. That album was a big album. That album was a big album, and it put Southern rap uh, out there for the world to hear. Have you ever heard of MJG and 8 Ball?
I've heard of them. I mean,
All right, we're
I
good.
don't listen to them.
We're good.
I've heard
Anyway,
of all these people. It's just a matter of if I listen to their music or not.
you Outkast
I
is one of
don't.
the great groups of the '90s.
No, I've heard Outkast.
I mean, Outkast in the '90s to me was better than the 2000s, but so was early REM was better than late REM. But let's not get that. So I don't buy Missouri's chances here, which I know is a little bit dumb, but at the same time, man, I just don't see it. They just don't have the guys. They're sloppy. Go ahead.
I mean, their most talented player is a freshman, right? That 5-star receiver. And I think Georgia's secondary is pretty good this year, and they're fast. So,
Well, what is this
I mean,
discussion, Ryan, of folks picking on
who are folks picking on?
uh, Lassiter? I think is that correct? I got that right.
He's actually gotten beat a handful of times, which is
Yeah,
gonna
but
happen, but it's
yeah,
happened a little more than you'd want it to. I know that you and I have different views of it.
I
Usually at the
definitely
game.
don't see the
Yeah.
DBs. That's very hard for me to
So
watch.
yeah, no, he's that's actually something I've noted that I haven't really talked about here. He's been getting beat a little bit more than you'd want your number 2 corner to get beat. And I don't think that Ringo is getting beat as often as Lassiter is. I don't know if it's a speed thing, if when the receiver's twitching that he's not, I don't know what it is exactly, because I'm
Where are
not a
you?
DB's
Where are
coach, but
you
he's
with
getting
this?
beat
Where are you with this defense?
with this defense.
Who's playing better, the defense or the offense, or Jack Podnesley?
Over the course of the season, the
Yes.
offense.
Yeah, man. I don't
Um,
know, man. I'm not as sure. I'm not as sure. Think about this. Let's hold on now. Hold on. I know I cut you off all the time, and all of our great viewers who have all definitely got DAWGSTRUCTION, and if they haven't, they can pick it up down below. Oregon has scored 70, 45, and 41. And the other game that they played, they scored 3, which was against Georgia. They they would be leading the country in scoring offense had they not played Georgia. Okay, they'd be averaging 53, I think, points a game, 52. So they scored a field goal. Samford didn't score. Um, and Carolina scored a junk touchdown with what, a minute left. Was it? I don't even think it was on 4th down. And
there
then
were less than 2 minutes left.
okay,
Yeah,
so if you go
on the
back,
third string guys,
well, that counts though.
it
It
does
all
count.
it all counts. So from earlier this week, in my investigative, why now I can't find the article. What's wrong with me?
Are you going Big J and
I'm
investigative
trying to go
reporting?
Big J. I know I'm not allowed to be a Big J journalist because I didn't like I don't have fancy glasses and smug look on my face, but I used to have glasses, and I often have a smug look on my face, but not because of that.
But not because of how big your J is.
No, no, that was well done. In 40 drives, the defense has had optimal outcomes in all but 7 of them, Ryan. So a conversion rate of that is 82% for the defense. So what is a conversion rate? That equals a punt, turnover, or turnover on downs. A turnover
Hmm.
on downs, I don't know why that's not considered a turnover, but it's not. But anyhow, 82% of the time they're getting what they want. The offense is a little bit below that, but it's not bad. They're at 73%. Comments? I mean, Georgia's offense has scored on 31 of 41 drives. Georgia's defense has stopped the other team or gotten the ball or not permitted. I mean, there's not been a missed field goal against Georgia. So what we're talking about is in 33 of the drives, Georgia has stone cold stopped the other team. I mean, that's
I think what you're seeing with this defense is, in my opinion, from what we've watched this year, I think the secondary is a little bit better than last year. I think that the linebacker drop off is not as big as we thought it was going to be, but I think that you can tell the defensive line is not close to. There just was so much talent and so many dudes on that line last
three
year,
first round guys.
and your best defensive lineman has barely been out there in the first month because of injury. So that's where you're, and that's, I guess, is what I'm kind of focused on a little bit too much. Maybe is that the line play just hasn't
I think
been
you're
to where
right.
it was last year. And it's just because of how inexperienced those guys are outside of Jalen Carter. And I think that you'll see some of that shored up when he's back into a rhythm, if slash whenever that happens. But on offense, it's like you've seen two different offenses, right? You're seeing one that just struggles to get anything going, and you're seeing one that's unstoppable. Now we've seen the one that's unstoppable a little bit more. I
Which
mean,
one is
unstoppable
not,
is a good word.
when you say struggles to get going? How do you mean?
I think that we're just expecting because of how talented they are on offense, and because what we saw in the Oregon game, that they're just going to go down there and score a touchdown every drive, and maybe that's bad on us and bad on some of the fans to have that assumption, because that's just no team is that good where they're just going to score a touchdown every single drive. And I think that we've become victim, or I have become victim, when I see them kick two field goals in a row. I'm like, oh, what's going on?
But
Well, they're
those are
still
points.
beating everybody pretty bad. There's still points, yeah. So
Those
I
are
think
points.
I'm looking at it a little bit incorrectly.
Well, no, well, okay, well, but okay. So 9 drives, Georgia's offense has not had an optimal outcome, and some people would say punting is an optimal outcome sometimes. I'm not including that in this, okay? But 9 drives, that means twice a game they don't have an optimal outcome. That's once a half, Ryan. That's hard to really kind of reconcile. And on the defensive side of the ball, they've only had 7 in 4 games. That's not even an unoptimal drive a half. So whereas against Samford they had no unoptimals. Against they had in the second half against Oregon. So you really go by quarters, right? So they've only
Hmm.
permitted points in like 4 quarters, I think it is, of the entire year. That's just not much. It's hard to it's hard to win like it's hard to win when you're not scoring, and it's hard for the other team to win when you don't allow them to score. Shit. I mean, I just think, to me, I think the offense has really played well. It's been, I don't know about shocking. I I
It's
I
not
was
shocked
not
me.
I was not. Let me complete this one thought, and I'll let you go. I was not totally sure if Georgia was the number one team in the country leaving Saturday. But I'm pretty convinced right now, because if you just take a step back and take a look at the uh, let's say 48 quarters of football of Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama, Georgia's 16 quarters have just been so much better than Alabama and Ohio State's. Um, it's hard to. I just don't. I think they're the best team in the country still. I think
Yeah, yeah.
one turnover game against Kent State does not change that.
No, I still think that they're the best team in the country, and I think Ohio State's second.
I think so.
Just my thoughts on what I've seen. Alabama's got plenty of time to change that, and they've got plenty of really good teams to potentially beat to change my opinion on that. But I was high on the offense this offseason. I was like, man,
Sure.
I got to go to a couple practice in the spring. We saw you went to one of them as well,
Mm.
in fall camp, and I was just like, man, they just have so many different types of weapons, and we obviously, and I mean, everyone at this point thinks really highly of Todd Monken, and he's done a really great job this year so far. So the offense being so explosive at times has not surprised me, and I think, look, man, their worst scoring game this year was 33. I mean, in the first 4 weeks, I mean, in week one, they didn't have an offensive touchdown last year against Clemson.
That's true.
Um,
But then
and,
they scored
you know,
56.
and then they scored 56 against UAB. But last year in the first month, you didn't see as much offensive consistency as you've seen this year. And usually that picks up as the season goes on. So, I think you're going to see, with the schedule that they have remaining, you're going to see at least a couple more blowouts.
Oh
Should
yeah.
be about 4 or 5 of them. But I also think that Georgia's got some tough games in a month or so, when you have that 4 game stretch of Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky. That's not a fun stretch for any team, even if you are the best team in the country.
Well, they should handle Florida. I think that
I agree.
I think the question is, who of Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Tennessee is the best. To me, right this second, Tennessee is probably playing the best. I think Kentucky probably is the best, but they have to go to start. Well, Georgia should handle Tennessee, they should handle Kentucky, and they should handle Mississippi State. I think the question is, can you survive that 4 week in a row? If that Tennessee game is a noon game after they've beaten the Gators in Jacksonville, yeah, that could be
No,
tricky. That could be
that's
tricky.
I looked at the November 5th schedule
It should be
2 days ago.
CBS.
It should be the 3:30 CBS, and that College Game Day will also, I think, very likely be coming to Athens on that day. If that game happened today, that is the best game for sure on that date. So I think that's going to be a big deal that weekend.
Well,
But
Tennessee's got to
I don't.
get there too, man. I mean, they got some. They could eat some losses. I mean, they have played two tight games that they won, which is against the Gators, who are
And
and
they've got to go
Pittsburgh.
to Tuscaloosa before.
So they've got
Yeah.
LSU. They got to go to LSU, and I think they host Alabama. They can't
Is
go.
it? Do I have it flipped?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can't host and or go away to both interdivisionals. So or intra, whatever it is. So Tennessee's got some questions. I think they play Kentucky before they play Georgia. Let me just look up their schedule real quick. But I,
They do.
it's
They do.
it's it's a rough run here, man. For them, LSU, Alabama, back to back, Tennessee, Martin, and then Kentucky, Georgia, back to back. I mean, that's their whole season is this 5 weeks or this sort of month of football, and it's going to be challenging.
Yeah. They've got a tough go. I'm really curious because I do think that they have a pretty good offense, and an offense that
They do. No, they do.
loves to get the ball off quick.
Yeah.
That's hard to prepare for, and that's one of the biggest pluses for them. But it's interesting to see how beat up they'll get over the next month and a half before they go to Athens. They could be kind of beat up.
They certainly could be. And Georgia needs to take advantage. They're the better team, but they need to take advantage of their situation. Thanks for watching. We'll see you from Middle Earth on Saturday.